Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. So pleased to be with you all on today as we continue to have some very interesting conversations. We have in the studio with me my main man, Mark Bassett. What's good, Mark?
Hey now.
Hey now,
Hello.
you're an all-star. Get your game on. Go play.
Let's not get copyright infringement here. Calm down.
All right, and you heard the voice behind the scene. It is my producer, John B. in the place to be. What's good, John? Hello. So on our last conversation, when we were in and we were talking, we ended to start with the conversation about the red, the white, and the blue. Meaning that we are the United States of America, but for some reason, we find ourselves extremely divided. We are the red, the white, and the blue. And throw a couple stars in there, I guess, for those who are coming in that are part of the immigration process. I don't know. But we got into a conversation. I believe it was a conversation about Jonathan.
Well, it started with Jonathan's romantic relationships and the difference in the religions there, and we spent most of the time talking about religion.
That's what it was. So it was Jonathan's new love life, and he was talking about the conversations that were being had, and we got into the conversation of can a Catholic and a Protestant marry, and you were like, is that possible? Who marries them?
Of course.
All of that, I didn't know.
You're making it sound like I brought this up and I derailed things. No,
well, you were talking.
It was actually
weren't you talking about your search for the ring or something?
No, we instigated it. I actually should say
joking,
I instigated it. So.
Molly, Sarah, Susan, whatever your name is, I instigated it. It was not him. It was candid conversation. But anyway, Jonathan's here like, I'll delete it out. I'll just delete it out. But we're going to continue the conversation because that conversation took us to a place where we were talking about the differences and the nuances, all of us being people who believe in the Holy Bible as our governing factor. That we live
the people on the show in this room.
Yes,
not
those
all
of us.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to make that assertion for everyone that's listening.
Right.
But those individuals, the three of us that are in this conversation, but there's so many differences, and we were talking about how the differences in approaches and the rules and how do you become a minister and a pastor. But so we're going to bring all of that, and we're going to continue in this conversation because it is my belief, and you guys can push back on this if you will. It's my belief that a lot of what we see that is taking place in our country, in our, I was going to say policies, but lack of policies, infringement upon congressional powers, is backed by what I think is Christian nationalism. And I see that being the foundational piece. We've talked on this show about Project 2025, what it was, what we believed it would bring, what the scriptures and the pages were saying about it. Not the scriptures, but the pages were saying about it. And I believe that there's probably a lot of people out there that think that Project 2025 and scriptures may have a problem separating the two. First of all, let me ask that question.
I think they're one of the contingent of people that are behind this. I think there are other demographics and other people that are behind his base. I mean, ultimately, I think
what are those contingencies? Let's talk about
I think people that feel like the system has left them behind or disaffected, that as the country has evolved, that certain demographics have been left behind or no longer getting fair treatment. They're being treated unfairly, true or not. And so I think it's kind of the disaffected population of the U.S. that feel like they've been left behind as another large contingent. I think people frustrated with politics and kind of the current state of how things are done is another demographic that is kind of behind his base.
Okay, I can't disagree. Jonathan, chime in.
I think he's right.
for once on the show.
Okay, I think all of those things are very true. And I think that, and we've seen this before. I think that there is so there's Christian nationalism. I think that there is also at the crux of what the MAGA movement is, I think the bread and butter, the meat of it, I see a lot of people who are afraid.
I would agree. I think he's tapping into people's fears.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I see a group of people who are afraid, who probably feel a lot of like what you said, Mark, that they have been disenfranchised, that they were being overlooked, that they were losing their America.
Right. Well, losing their view of the world, it's a zero-sum game. So if somebody gets something, someone has to lose something. And so if other people are getting something they didn't get before, all of a sudden that means they're losing.
It came from me.
It came from me.
Right. And I think that's pretty good. So let's talk about what this MAGA presentation is, because I think that I think the religion piece was a very interesting place for us to go. But I also think getting an understanding of really where is the loyalists of this base, where do they fall in? How would you describe what that base looks like?
Well, I think again, I think there's a Christian nationalism movement. I think it's the people that, again, feel like they've been left behind, that, they're disenfranchised.
Okay. My question though is, are we talking about tech giants that have been left behind? Are we talking about?
No, I do think that's a different demographic, and the way they're playing it is to their advantage. How can I get even more?
I want us to get into it. But let's talk economically.
I think
we were looking at a picture about social economics. What do we be looking
I would
at?
think on average it's middle to lower middle, and below, middle class and below. That, just being transparent here, black or white Americans that are middle class, lower class. It's been, again, surprising. I'll turn it around on you. I mean, the Hispanic population was very supportive of Donald Trump.
Yeah. I wonder how they're feeling
kind of
right
a
now.
surprise to me when you told me that. I had to go check it out. Black males.
What did you find out? What did you find out?
It was almost 50% of Hispanics supported Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And again, I think it was around the border issue.
Absolutely.
A lot of these people.
Which is crazy. I'm sorry, Mark.
Yep.
I have a friend.
Yep.
I wish I could say their name, but I can't. It's a couple, and they're Hispanic. Their family came over here from Mexico.
Legally or illegally?
My eyebrows raised. I could never do it, but my
Okay.
eyebrows
All
raised
right.
because I really don't know.
Yep.
But they're here.
Yep.
They receive the benefits and enjoy the benefits of the American dream, so to speak. They are more passionate about kicking immigrants out than anyone else. And the thing that was so confusing to me, and I guess if you're American, you're American, and I guess if you can lose your identity, and I kind of think that they have an identity crisis there too.
Yeah.
Because they don't consider that, even though they say Hispanic when it benefits them, they really live a life of white folks.
Okay.
And they struggle really with the border issue. And I'm like going, you're Hispanic, your ancestors were Hispanic, you struggle and you don't have any issues with what's going on right now with the border, and they have zero.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've seen clips of this lady in Miami, I think it was, who was very much for Donald Trump. I think, again, his campaign was, we want to secure tighter borders. I think a large percentage of Americans would agree, like, hey, we need to have tighter borders.
Absolutely.
And it was around basically kicking out hardened criminals, gangbangers that were here illegally.
That was the rhetoric.
That was the rhetoric. And I think, again, most people in the United States, irrespective of party, would support that. Now, what's transpired is not that. And
what?
Yeah. And so
you mean he lied?
Yeah, I won't say that necessarily, but
I'll say it.
Yeah.
He lied.
But what's transpired is not that. I think it's been an eye opener for a lot of that demographic. Young black men. Black males, and I'll turn to you and say why.
Well,
I think young men in general, though, came out very strong for Donald Trump.
I got to correct that, though,
okay?
Because black folks as a whole voted for Donald Trump. There were, and even with black men, you still are looking at 85% or more.
Sure, but it was
a
much higher percentage than his
higher than people would have expected, because I'll tell you why that happened.
Yeah, and so that's my question.
Because we have an understanding, or we have a thought, which is being challenged, that there's no way they're going to let him do this. There's no way they're going to let someone do this. So they can only really do this. And if they do this, this is financially going to be beneficial to me.
Right.
The fact that we would challenge the 14th Amendment, the fact that we would challenge
Yeah.
civil rights, the fact that we would talk about DEI.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that they said, we're making an economic choice, which good for you. And I hope that you're happy, because I think that there is this thing in both the Black and the brown community that when we begin to get out of and we get $1 above expenses and we live the ability to live the American dream, that we begin to take on the capitalistic viewpoint.
No one wants to pay more taxes.
That is entrenched in this nation. But real people who understand, and when it is about the good of the whole, and you can make it as an individual, that has always been a part of the American process, will take you and you're going to be different. That's what's happening with that lower percentage of individuals that voted for Donald Trump. You're not like them. You're one of us. So come vote with us, because we're going to help you get back what other rising folks took away. And so go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think young men in general swung very strongly for Donald Trump.
Why do you think that is?
I think because...
I want to ask Jonathan. Jonathan, why do you think young men in general were kind of attracted to Donald Trump?
It's not that they were attracted to Donald Trump. It's that they were repelled from the Democratic Party because they were entirely ignored by the Democratic Party.
It was women. I
think if you look at the Democratic Party, there's been, I think, a vilification.
There is a Democratic Party still?
Well, that's a good, technically there is.
Knew? Okay.
I mean, there has been, I think, kind of a vilification of males on the left, this term toxic masculinity. Yeah. And I think, a natural reaction to that is to repel against it. I think that the issue with the Democratic Party is they keep moving further and further to the left versus moving to the center, which is really how you win an election. And so taking on fringe, I would argue fringe, and I probably shouldn't use that word, issues like, transsexual issues, and making it a centerpiece of your campaign.
Arguably, we're talking about, what are they saying, 10-12% of the population?
Oh, not even. Yeah, I would argue.
I would say less than. Yeah, I mean, with the way that things are being pushed and an agenda, I think there is an agenda that exists. But I think that you're absolutely right. When we look at this, I think there were two issues that were three. We'll say abortion is one of those issues. And then this whole gender identity, the alphabet
thing.
crew, LBGTQ plus I, and each year it seems like there's an addition to that. Right. And then I would say, so those two, and then I would look at the last being, what was the thing that you just said? You just said it. We were talking abortion, we were talking about the gender issue, and then masculinity. Yeah, like what is going on? Yeah, right. Like what is the issue? So those became the issues that they were able to coalesce a group of folk around. Right. They're saying, listen, you've pushed enough. And then
I think most Americans, take the biological males competing in female sports. I think the vast majority of Americans, both Democratic and Republicans, would go, this is ridiculous.
But when you talk to people that are a part of the LGBT community, they're like that is just crazy.
Like I said, I think most like Martina Navratilova has basically said, this is ridiculous.
How can that ever
not fair to a woman who was born biologically a woman? That's just not fair to them.
It's almost like a black man starting to play hockey. It's just not fair.
So to pick that up as a mantle, and I want to be clear about the whole LGBTQ thing. Yeah. I have no, absolutely. I mean, I have 2 kids that identify as bisexual. One of them is actually right now dating someone of the same sex. Okay. I love that child.
Love them.
I love the person they're with. I just think as a party, you shouldn't vilify a different area or disenfranchise a different part of the population by taking policies that are,
and I don't think that you can stake your identity on one of those issues.
So,
love who you love.
Yeah, exactly.
But come on, the reality of it is that is a small percentage of what we need to really address. But what I thought was great, and as we get to this conversation about this division, what I thought was great, we talked about religion, because religion is something, and I'll tell you, even in the Black community, there's a whole bunch of you Black pastors out there who ignored all of the issues about civil rights, all of the issue about social rights, all the issues that would show really bad economic implications for your parishioners, the people who sit in your pews, for a fringe issue on abortion. And because of abortion and gay rights, you voted for Donald Trump because that's what the Bible would want you to do. And I had these crazy conversations with people. And I said, when you have those, we're talking Bible, when you have conversations and you look at the Bible all of those things were going on at the same time. They were happening then, Mark. But,
of course they were.
But the Bible talks about social justice and social equality and treating those who are the least of us the best, more than it does anything else.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I think a lot of people are the single issue voters around abortion and will ignore every other policy that revolves around that. And I understand the passion around that. I don't support abortion either, other than in rare cases, because I believe in the sanctity of life, and I believe it begins with conception. But then to ignore every other thing, if you believe yourself to be Catholic or Protestant, and you believe in the tenets of God, to ignore every other thing, the guidance from the Bible to support that singular issue, I struggle with that personally.
And I think it's good. So this conversation that we were talking about religion, it now brings, I want to bring it into light from this perspective. We see Project 2025, which is a conservative agenda. I think it was a Heritage Foundation that were the writers of this, a very right-wing group. Actually,
very conservative.
Not
very
right-wing.
conservative, family-oriented, but very, obviously kind of Protestant-based, evangelical-based religious
and so they have come in and they said, how can we begin to bring back, quote unquote, American values?
Right.
And so defining American values from this Christian
Judeo-Christian
perspective, and taking into account that all of the other things don't matter. The concept, and we've heard the conversation about producing more children. Have you heard that, Mark?
I've heard it a little bit about, from an economic perspective, you actually do need a growing population.
That's why I'm against abortion.
To sustain
as an African American,
I'm
against abortion because when you look at the number of individuals that are in abortion clinics, it is Black females. It is Black babies that are being aborted. So I'm against abortion, not only because God says that, but also it doesn't make, primarily that's why, but I believe, but also because of the fact that our community and our population needs to grow.
Well, I think that what they, I would think, again, falling back to like some of the blocks of people that have supported Donald Trump, the only part of the population that's actually growing is the Hispanic population, because they're still Catholic and they're still old school Catholics having big families.
So let me ask you this question, because I think that this is where many Hispanics who have found themselves post the election, after casting their vote, the reality of a Trump presidency has slapped them dead between the eyes. They found out that they were the other Black man in this country very fast with the ICE raids and the things that were going on. Do you think, and we look at this, Catholicism, do you think that white Catholics and Black Catholics, not white Catholics and Black Catholics, white Catholics and Hispanic Catholics, are they the same kind of Catholic?
Oh, wow. Ultimately, people are people. I think they are.
Okay.
I think.
Do you understand why I'm asking this question?
I do.
Okay.
Well, I don't understand. I'll see where you're going, but I think they're basically the same.
What about you, Jonathan?
I don't think they're the same. I think that American Catholicism has been watered down big time, and so has followed other denominations. But
say some more. What do you mean by that, Jonathan?
I mean, if you look at the Second Vatican Council, Vatican II, that took place in the 60s.
This time I know more about Catholicism than me.
Than you.
I've been reading up on it. It took down a lot of we need to uphold these standards, and some of them rightfully, but then a lot of American Catholic churches took it too far. And in kind of pulling that back, it's just kind of been diluted a little bit to fit the culture.
I actually think
that
you
happened.
need to do that, though, Jonathan. I mean, I think in order for the church to continue to sustain itself, it needs to evolve.
I disagree,
Okay.
and I think that other countries, specifically Mexico, Spain,
Yep.
European countries especially, didn't go that far.
When
with
you
it.
say go that far, explain what you mean.
They
Jonathan.
didn't water things down. In
Like
their-
what? Like what,
Yeah,
Jonathan?
you get a little specific there, because like the Latin Mass thing to me is like, for sure you should have a Mass in a local language.
Yep,
Okay.
and they still do.
Yep.
Internationally, they still do the Latin Mass quite a bit.
Where? Not in Mexico. No way.
Probably not in Mexico. No, but I know it's. Big
I've
in
never been
Spain.
to a place where I've seen a Latin Mass other than in
Italy.
pockets.
Obviously,
You got to
but-
be a very niche pocket of ultra conservative Catholics to pull off.
Oh,
There's one that's done locally, actually.
Yeah,
but-
I want him to continue.
Yeah,
like, what
what-
are those things that
yeah.
he sees that are different between white Catholics and Hispanic Catholics?
And I think it has less to do with what the church is about in these situations and more to do with the family attitude towards the
the
religion.
culture. I agree with, and I think what I've seen, for what it's worth, when I lived in Europe in the late '80s, and when we would walk into a church with our family, it was a bunch of old people, very few families, and so there was a kind of a move away from religion towards agnosticism in Europe decades ago. When I was coming to church in the U.S. in the '80s and '90s, you'd still see a big, broad range of young to old families, but now you see fewer and fewer young people, and I would argue it's in a certain sense an evolution to that agnosticism that you saw in Europe 20, 30, 40 years ago has happened here, and that it will eventually happen in Mexico as well.
All right, we're going to put a pin in it right
yeah.
there. When we come back, we're going to talk about the intersectionality between culture and religion, because I think it's important. 6 Day don't go away. We'll be back with more United Shades of Gray.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem, and we're back with more United Shades of Gray. Before the break,
I'd like to finish a thought.
Go ahead.
I wanted to just finish the thought of like, so why do I think anyway? And
Mark, why were you raising your hand? Like
I just wanted to let you know I wanted to. I was
coming back to you. Go ahead.
Finish my thought. So why, in my opinion, why has like the American Catholic become more, the younger people in the Catholic faith become more and more agnostic? I think there's a few things. I think the pedophile thing was a huge blow, but I think that it was hard for younger people to relate what was going on within the church and the Mass and the church's teachings. And that's where I kind of come back to, like, I do think, Jonathan, for what it's worth personally, that any religion, anything needs to evolve as time moves on to continue to be able to speak effectively to its base, to its people.
And interesting. I think that's an interesting perspective, and
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of people that would agree with you.
Yeah.
And
there are definitely people that would disagree with that.
Absolutely.
But there's absolute truths, and I agree with that.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
So what I'm looking at this is because I look at the evolution, because there was such a strong belief that there should be a separation between church and state, that the church should have less influence, less involvement with the choosing of presidents and things of that nature, government officials, that they should not take a claim. And now, so as we're talking about the red, white, and blue, I think one of the things as we talk about this division is this new infusion of religious beliefs into the political mainstream.
I think that is a misrepresentation of the separation of church and state.
Okay, go ahead.
The separation of church and state is a separation of establishment.
Absolutely.
People are going to have their values. They're going to derive those values from different places, and they're going to enact those values when they vote.
So where's the misrepresentation?
The misrepresentation is by saying, well, people are implementing values based on religion in government, and that's an infringement of church and state.
And I think that is a particular side of that argument, because I believe that is a whole different, and what I believe is that group of people believe that I vote based upon my religious faith.
Well, I think ultimately, I think I'm saying what Jonathan said. Like, if you're a religious person, your religion influences your personal beliefs and what you think is right and wrong, and as such, will certainly influence how you vote.
How so? Because I think this is the conversation we're having now is directly in line with, I think, the division that exists in our country.
Yeah.
How do you think your religious belief affects your vote? In what way?
I just don't think it has to impact it in some way.
In what way? Let's talk about the ways that how do you, let's talk personally. How do you rationalize your faith and your vote?
Yeah. Well, I try to, in essence, understand what my church's teachings are. That doesn't mean I will vote that way. So, for example, and this would be a case of where it doesn't impact it, I guess. The Catholic faith is still pretty strongly that, homosexuality is wrong. I actually believe, and the priest that I talk to will probably come and get me, but
we'll bleep it out.
Yeah, no, I actually believe people can be born that way. I don't see any reason why they can't be born that way. And as such, it's a pretty long ask to ask someone to acknowledge that you're homosexual and then be celibate your entire life if you choose not to. Because someone will say, well, the priest is celibate. And I would go, yeah, but he's choosing to do that. But
it's a call.
And so I would never vote for that.
Okay.
Now, I happen to believe abortion is wrong. Now, someone could argue, well, it's because you're Catholic. I would argue it's not. But someone could easily say, well, you're Catholic and as such, you're voting against abortion. I just happen to believe that life begins at conception, and that's a scientific fact. It's not a religious fact, because ultimately, someone can't tell me that 2 months and 31 days, someone goes from not being human to being human. And so, at what point do you define what someone is human or not?
All right, Jonathan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it has to do with where you derive your morals. So, if you are a religious person,
I think morality is a key word for me.
Yeah. If you have a basis of faith, you're going to have some concrete stance on morality.
Yeah.
And this and understanding.
Say that again, and then I want to know if you really believe that statement you just made. But go ahead.
If you have a basis of faith, you will have a foundation for morality.
Okay.
And you'll have some foundation of determining right and wrong.
Okay.
Do you think you need faith to have that?
That's one more. I believe that.
Well, I let Jonathan answer.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and then we'll let you talk.
Yeah.
My answer is going to be very unsatisfying.
Okay.
The Bible says the law of the Lord is written on the hearts of man.
Yep.
There is conscience in there, but our society has taken that to be, well, whatever. It's taken morality and made it subjective. It's made it live your truth. What is true? What is true for you?
But do you believe people are born with some simple concepts of what's right and wrong? Killing people is wrong, generally speaking.
I don't think that it's innate to man to do what's right. I think it's.
Yeah, I disagree with you.
I think it's innate to man to do what's best for me.
Yeah, and I guess I disagree with that, but we've had that discussion before.
And that's what it is. It's a difference in the basis of morals based on kind of the there's a faith system that is a component in that.
Yeah. Now one could argue like, well, why do you say that? If you're talking to me,
absolutely.
And then it might come from, well, ultimately your religious upbringing lays in a belief system or an action system that means that you put others first. I just, put the religion aside. My personal observation, for what it's worth, let me finish my thought, is I am most at peace, most happy in my life when I am not focused on myself, I'm focused on others. And that's got nothing to do with religion per se. Now, all religions have that as a tenet, but that is a personal observation of my own happiness or unhappiness, depending on what I'm focused on.
As a man of faith, as a pastor, I recognize that in me is no good thing. Within myself, I am going to self-promote. I'm going to fight for what's best for Kareem. And it is my faith.
Okay.
And we use the word morality of my faith that really drives me to do what is right. Not my political beliefs. I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
Yep.
I wouldn't even say an independent. I am someone who believes that who I am and what my faith dictates has a very, as Jonathan was saying earlier, I was kind of challenging him because I wanted to see where he was going.
Yep.
It governs how I view things.
Yep.
Now, with that, most people would say, well, then you should, and I've been told this, if you are a believer and you're a pastor, you believe in God's word and you're against abortion, then you have to vote this way because morality, based upon what I say, and that's the thing where I'm getting. This concept of morality has to either be morality, but if it's morality and it's selective outrage, then it's not morality.
Because my pushback would be,
let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
Because there's a term, anthropopathic.
Wow, that's a big word.
Yeah, which basically means we make God think and feel the way we want him to, based upon the way we think and feel. And so I believe that if there is a God who gives a moral code, then that moral code has to be absolute. And when I say absolute, it does not by the law of absolution, but by the spirit of absolute.
Right.
And I think that is where we take the wheels off and we run off the wheel.
Yeah.
Because we do this based upon how we feel, based upon how our experiences are, based upon the morality that has been taught and shown in our lives and in our culture. So as we were talking about faith before, I think as we look at this and we look at Project 2025, a lot of the concepts that are in here are really adopted and believed by religious circles. And I would say white evangelicals who have failed me in a very strong way, I think, in the understanding of what morality is or the walking out of what God's moral code is, as well as my Catholic brothers and sisters, because I think that when they look at where their morality is, it is a morality that is grounded and drenched in what I would consider selective outrage. We're upset about the murdering of babies.
Yeah, well, and I think everybody should.
We're upset about same-sex marriages.
Yep.
But we're not upset about the fact that we have a man that we put in office who has philanderous characteristics with his wife. We're not upset about the fact that black men are being killed. If you are pro-life, is after inception to the grave.
What I think they would say, and I don't agree with it, but I don't like him either. I think he's a bad person, but I support his policy. Basically, I think he's bought those blocks of vote by promoting something that they'll support, irrespective of his personal morality or likability or whatever.
Jonathan, I feel you breathing down my neck on the right side.
I think a big part of this conversation is a difference in understanding about the role of government in society. So there are people who believe
not understanding of the role of government, our perspectives of the role of government in society.
Yeah.
Because understanding means that there's one way.
Yeah.
And so there's differing opinions and we respond accordingly.
Yeah. And so there are people who want these programs, want the government to intervene for the benefit of different people.
Why?
Because they see the government as a tool for enacting that change.
Why? And we're speaking specifically of the federal government. So in this case, because go ahead. I'm going to let you finish.
And then there are people who say the government shouldn't have as big a role in people's lives in everyday society. Let's pare that back and leave the helping each other up to ourselves. And it's just a difference in perspective, like you said, about the role of government.
Be the typical Republican.
But this goes back to what I talked about. Do we separate? Is there a separation of church and state? And you were talking about the systems, but the systems bleed over when convenient. And I say that because when you hear and we see the things that are talked about and that were talked about previously in Project 2025 that we are now seeing implemented, almost 50% or so completed, almost verbatim in terms of what was written and what's walking out in reality. What I see is exactly what you're saying, Jonathan. I see that people have a perception. I don't want the government being involved. And I think that the people who feel that way, they have a particular historical perspective in this country. They have the understanding that we want to make America great again. They have a particular privilege that has been embraced by their place in American society that they want to reenact, versus those who say government needs to be involved. And I asked the question, why? Because the federal government has always been the fail-safe for folk who are not a part of the majority to be able to have, if not a slice of the American pie, let me at least get a piece of crust.
Yep.
And so when we see that, the American government, when we talk about what's taking place, and I said that this was a DEI issue, taking those jobs in federal government, who does that impact? Most largely, Black women. The majority, like 80,000 Black women, have lost their job because we want to make government more efficient, right?
Yep.
But what we're also doing is that we're removing fail-safes that have allowed the country to operate in a single view of what America looks like: blonde hair, blue eyes, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, whatever that looks like. And the church on both sides of this have been the avenue by which people have began to look and seek for refuge or for change.
So is it the government's job, and thereby the taxpayers' job, to supply these Black women with jobs?
No, it is America's responsibility to make sure that Black people who have built this nation, and when I say built, I mean built. I mean, when you go to Washington, D.C. and you take your family trips and you spend your dollars there, you're going to look at statues that were built by Black folks. Also, the funds that were created in that process were paid to the slave owners who allowed them to go do this work. When I talk about building this country, I'm talking about the technological advancements that have happened. I'm talking about when you drive down the street, we're not crashing into each other because a Black man created the stoplight. I'm talking about when you go to the hospital and you need to have a transplant, it was a Black man who did the first open heart transplant. I'm talking about when you talk about chemistry, the person who created chemistry was an African American woman. So what I'm saying is, we have brought all of these contributions and have built this amazing country. That's why I will always love America as an ideal, but the reality of it, the morality of it, of this country is ridiculous. The fact that we have to bring in people and set them in a place in federal government. The reason it is the federal government's responsibility, because it was the federal government that was responsible for the enactment of slavery. And so because that's where the change began, that's where the change has to take place. And so this whole I'm going after DE&I, let's make America great again, it's taking America back to a place where states were in charge, where the Mason-Dixon line really meant something, where Texas and Louisiana and Missouri and Alabama can say, y'all can do whatever you want for them colored folk if you want to, but we're not going to do it. And it was the federal government that says we as a nation are going to take this stance. So that is why I believe, yes, the federal government has a responsibility.
So do you think federal jobs were cut because they knew that it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and see, I just don't agree with it.
Look at the departments that were cut.
I understand the math. That's how it turned out.
I mean, if the math ain't mathing, then tell me. But if you can come up with a different way.
There's two different things. I mean, do you think the reason they went after federal jobs was to basically unemploy Black people, or is that just an artifact of the choice to, like, we're going to cut jobs?
I think that's twofold.
Okay.
I think that one of the reasons was they understand that the federal government has a different responsibility than state government is. You can still go to Texas, and the whole good old boy system that was in place 100 years ago pretty much is still in place, with some sprinkles of we're going to do this for public opinion. But the reality of it is, yes, when you go after federal jobs, you know that there are tons of Black people that were put in those positions as watchdogs to a system in states that did not allow equality.
And I guess I just refuse to believe that that's the primary driver. Let me finish my thought. I just refuse to believe that that's the primary driver for the decision. I think,
I don't expect anything different.
Well, but I acknowledge that is the artifact of that decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing, what our Hispanic brothers and sisters out there are seeing that thought that they were acceptable and that we're on the right, what they're realizing is that you are a little bit lighter than most of us brown folks, us darker brown folks, but you're learning that you are dispensable as well. And I think that when you look at how our government is operated, I think that was a twofold. Yes, they knew that Black jobs were there. That created a wealth that you don't find in many places. And it was also to remove the fail safes and the watchdogs. Why would you want there not to be any more civil rights investigations that could go on when legal systems and the criminal system creates opportunities, as well as law enforcement, for blacks to be taken advantage of?
Like, what
would be the purpose?
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with any of that.
Right.
I mean, I come back at a higher level to a different. I disagree with a lot of what has been implemented fundamentally.
No, and you've said that,
Yeah,
and I appreciate that.
But at the top of it all is, and this is kind of, I think, was the message that was sold, and at a high level, I don't disagree, that we have a huge deficit, and the only way to fix a deficit is to increase revenue or decrease spending or some combination of both. I also think we have a government that over hundreds of years
have we even begun to the target of what you just said, that we've got to decrease, we've got to cut. Have we even begun to deal with those issues?
Well, hold on, let me finish my thought. And Jonathan wants to say something.
Has the cost of eggs come down? Cost of milk?
I don't think so.
I thought inflation just went up.
We'll let you go. Because ultimately, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think anything is actually working. I also think we have a government that's just grown and grown and grown and grown. And I would argue that every time something was added, it was probably the right thing to do at that time. But at some point, you need to take a step back and go, do we need everything that we still have? And I would argue you probably don't, or it doesn't need to be as big as it once was. And so then I think you need to then go down the path of, in a very thoughtful, strategic way of going, how do we increase revenue? And I won't even go there. But then it's, because this is really more about cutting costs. How do we cut costs? How do we make government more efficient? And instead of doing it in an intelligent, strategic way, what they went after was easy things to go after that appealed to their base. USAID, DE&I, et cetera. Those are easy things that appeal to their base, but which are fractions of a percent of the total government budget. The right thing to do is go after the big segments of where you spend money and how do we make that more efficient?
All right. I'm going to allow Jonathan to say what he said, because I think that what was intended is working the way they intended it to work. Go ahead.
I agree. I like that you said the way it was sold is this, because that is the way it was sold, and that's not the way it's being implemented.
Right.
It's, we're going to make it more efficient.
It's what you voted
and
for.
then we're going to spend this money over here now. No. We said cut back. We didn't say cut back and then spend this money over.
Is
here.
anything that Donald Trump is doing that people are outraged by? Is anything brand new, or is this what he said he would do? Is this what folks were screaming that would?
Well, I think he said I'll tighten the borders. I think he said I'll get rid of violent, and I'm sure he is. What he didn't say is I'm also going to get rid of families that have been here for 20 years that just do a job and work. We're going to go after them too.
But that's exactly what he said.
That's
exactly what he said.
I don't think that's
what he said.
Oh, he vilified immigrants in the process, and people cheered "Build the Wall." Yeah. That was the first time around, and the same philosophy continues through the second time. So it's impossible for you, and this is why I say that this idea of moral code and this concept, that's why the conversation of religion, because we're dealing with issues that are backed by a religious perspective, a religious ideology, from a perspective that is very different from those who I think truly love this country.
And I would argue most. Yeah. Anyway, we're done here.
We're not done.
Yeah, for Monday, we'll be back on Monday to record again.
So we're gonna stop here today, but we are certainly not done. I really appreciate this conversation. And Mark, I think that when you say that was not the intention.
I didn't say that. That's not what was articulated.
That's not what was articulated.
Right.
But I believe that was the intention. I believe that was really clear messaging that was very true, that I've been screaming about before the election ended. But for those of you out there, I think that many of you are probably suffering from buyer's remorse. But I think that we saw the handwriting on the wall. We're going to continue this conversation because morality means that everyone matters. Morality means that there is a code or a standard that is above our natural mankind. Will we ever be able to reach that standard? We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time on United Shades of Gray. God bless you.